scary stories.
Back in 2013, I was living with my ex at the time, who lived near a country village, and as I was between jobs at the time, I picked up a job at a local garden center. It was casual retail work, fairly decent pay, and easygoing enough that I could take coffee breaks frequently and basically wear whatever I liked as long as I wore my work polo shirt. It was walking distance from my ex's house and full of people of all ages who were the most lovely people I had ever met. Most of the regular customers who came into the garden center were usually sweet old people who would visit the cafe because we had free teas and discounted lunches for OAPs if they had a store card, so you often got to know all of them, and some of them we gave nicknames. Most of them were sweet, like Pink Hair Lady, a badass 80-year-old grandma who wore a tasseled leather jacket and bright pink hair. Then there was Camper Van Couple, who used to drive a really cool camper van with bright orange flowers painted on it. You get the idea. With Creepy Artist Man though, he gave most of the young girls weird vibes. He wore a straw hat and was in his late 40s, and he had round gold-rimmed glasses and would wear strange graphic t-shirts with naked women on them or Professional Pussy Patrol sorts of slogans on the back. He always wore ripped jeans where his knees were always hanging out of them, which were always dirty with paint or mud. He also had this weird half smile that would never leave his face, and he would kinda leer, and it made people very uncomfortable. He would take off his glasses and clean them constantly, which kind of made you feel like he was trying to get a better look at the young girls who worked there, especially the young ones, 16 plus. Anyway, it was a roasting hot summer day, and I had gratefully accepted the job of watering the hanging baskets outside. I was wearing black shorts with my red polo and my tool belt to prune and deadhead plants as I went along. With the hose in my hand and sunnies on my face, I was busy but enjoying the solidarity in the quietest part of the garden center. Why, hello there. Out of practically nowhere, he slipped out behind some wooden trestles and looked me up and down, smiling with his weird, too small teeth. His eyes lingered on me for what felt like an uncomfortable few seconds as I turned off my hose and asked him if he needed anything. He shook his head and kind of shrugged, still smirking at my legs. Okay, sir, have a nice day. Let me know if you need anything. And then I turned to continue. I've never seen you here before. Are you a new one? Huh? Me? Well, I've been here for about 8 months now. I must have missed the memo that a beauty like you started. You have a nice tan, and you look young. Thanks. I'm 23. I have to get back to work. It was nice to meet you, Casey Cat Lady. I suddenly remember my name badge, and I get slightly irritated that he now knows my full name. I make a beeline for the smoking area, where the tool shed was, with an excuse to grab smaller gardening gloves, and by the time I returned to the floor, he had left. As the weeks went on, he would come to the store regularly, usually mid-afternoon, coincidentally, or so I thought, at around the time I started my shift. Most of the time, I was the only cashier, so I would have to serve him. He would buy the most small, pointless things, like wire or tiny bags of birdseed. It seemed like he would purposely make a purchase with the intention of interacting with me. He would make comments about my appearance. You have your hair different today. Yesterday you had it down. You have new glasses. He would always announce my name loudly and deliberately during every interaction. I felt uncomfortable, but I was 23 and polite, so I shrugged it off. Around Christmas time, I was decorating the artificial trees, and he cornered me in the forest area in the back of the store. He jumped out from behind one of the trees and made me jump, to which I was kind of pissed about because I ended up dropping a glass ornament and it smashed. He bent down and also tried to help. He grabbed my wrist and told me not to touch the glass. His grip was scarily tight and forceful, and his hands were clammy and gross. I slipped my hand out of his grip, and then I asked if I could help him with anything. This is when things get weird. He pulled a leaflet from his back pocket out and he told me he was an artist and he had a Christmas art show coming up in a local church and he wanted me to go with him. He told me that he was a painter and he thought that I would like his work, which I never indicated to him that I was interested in art or to anyone else for that matter, which is why I thought it was strange. I asked him if he wanted me to pin the leaflet to the local event board, and then he reached out and touched my arm and said, "No, the invitation is specifically for you." He pointed his finger and jabbed it into my breast, and he said, "You." I'm standing there in the dark corner, obscured from view by artificial Christmas trees, and just kind of concerned by this guy who had touched me. I cringed away and said, "I was busy that night with my boyfriend, I'm sorry," and I kind of scampered off. I remember feeling really strange after that, the fact he grabbed my wrist and jabbed his finger into my chest in that way. I told a few of my colleagues about it, and they all told me they would warn me next time he was in the store, so I could maybe hang out in the storeroom until he was gone. Well, that memo must have missed a few of the temporary Christmas staff, because one day I get told by one, "Your friend is asking you by the tills." It wasn't unusual for my friends to stop by, as it's a fairly popular area for gifts, so I was thinking that it was maybe my ex's mom or something. I headed to the till, and there he was. He was holding a piece of paper. I cringe, but he had seen me by now, so I walked over and asked what he needed from me. He passed the piece of paper over to me, and I opened it. Folded up was a drawing of me, with exaggerated breasts and cartoon-like eyes, watering the hanging baskets in a kind of sexual position. I kind of stood there and said thank you, but I couldn't keep it because it was inappropriate to take gifts from customers. I handed it back to him and he kind of looked at me with an angry stare. He turned around and walked out without another word. By this point, I had had enough. I knocked on my manager's door and told him about the whole scenario that just happened and all of the previous interactions I have had with him over the past year. He watched the CCTV and agreed that it was so strange the way he gave me those gross pictures, and he told me that he would take care of it if he came back. My manager praised me for my reaction to his advances and said I was doing the right thing and he would try to see him off the next time. The next day was a Sunday and I was not due in at work. My boss calls me and tells me he just received a call from HQ stating that an anonymous caller had called in to report a staff member inappropriately coming on to them. The caller had said that I was inappropriate towards him while I was working and that I had offered sex with him and that I had led him on and I was being obviously promiscuous and that I had been pursuing him for over a year. The jerk even described a fictitious relationship we had and ranting loudly about how I had been cheating on my boyfriend before hanging up. HQ luckily didn't believe a word as my manager had already mentioned this guy to the higher-ups, but they did think it was wise to let me know about this crazy guy and suggest that I report it to the police. The next day, I did just that. The officer I spoke to said that he matched the description of a man who was a local pest, someone who oftenly harasses young girls in the local area. He also was known to stalk girls in his car, and he attempted to abduct a younger girl around 4 years ago. The police officers assured me that they would file a report and talk to him officially, and that he was not allowed at this garden center or anywhere near me ever again. And if he did, I was to call the police and he would be arrested. Unfortunately though, it didn't stop him from sending a ranting letter to my workplace addressed to me saying that he would end himself if I didn't take him back and receive the gift that he drew for me. Fortunately, the police saw this as unsolicited contact and he was thankfully arrested. So creepy artist guy, let's not meet ever again.
This story extends from 8th grade middle school to my freshman year in college. I'm 24 years old now, so this must have began in 2008. I was raised in a Korean household with strong Christian beliefs. Every summer and winter, there would be a youth retreat where all of the teens in our church would go to one big joint retreat with counselors and teenagers from churches in and out of the state. I met my best friend, Hannah, there. She was from Philly and had a pastor who was white, who we called Pastor Allen. After these retreats, everyone would add each other on Facebook and keep in touch. I remember a day or two after the '08 summer retreat, Pastor Allen would often reach out and ask how my talk with God was going since the retreat, and if I ever need someone to speak to, I could always confide in him. This didn't alarm me at the time because counselors would keep in touch all the time. I always kept our conversations brief considering the fact I was shy and timid. Over the years, I had seen Pastor Allen at retreats and was friendly with him. Nothing strange happened other than his persistence with keeping in touch with me on Facebook. After retreats, I slowly stopped talking to him, and eventually we didn't speak at all. This is where it all starts to get weird. One day, after our summer retreat in 2011, I got a friend request from a woman named Sumiko. I noticed we had a lot of mutual friends from the retreat, so I assumed she was a counselor there. She messaged me immediately after I accepted the request. Her and I became quickly acquainted. At the time, I was 15, and she was everything I needed and an older sister. Although we never met, I let my naivety get the best of me and confided in her about my teenage girl troubles. After months in, I remember walking into church and asking one of my youth leaders if they had met her at the retreat. He said he had never heard of her. I asked him if he could go check the roster, and he did, only to find out there was no Sumiko on the list. That's when things started to get super eerie for me. I panicked and went home to block Sumiko off of my Facebook. I saw on her page that the only person who continued to tell her it was nice seeing her was Pastor Allen. No one else from the retreat seemed to really be interacting with her. It all started to freak me out. I blocked her and unfriended Pastor Allen. I remember no longer attending these church retreats. A few days later, I received an email telling me that Sumiko decided to attempt suicide because of me, and that the email was coming from the mental hospital she was staying at. They told me it was all my fault. I was a junior in high school under high amounts of stress from SATs, and I deleted the email because I just wanted to forget about it all and focus on studying. Shortly after, I started to receive really unfriendly anonymous messages on my Tumblr. They would tell me that I was going to burn in hell for eternity if I continued to stray from God. They continued all the way into my senior year in high school. I always deleted and ignored them, or I'd reply sarcastically and laugh at them with my friends. Eventually, the messages faded and I didn't hear much from them anymore. In 2012, I got accepted to a close-by Christian college and moved into my dorm. My dorm floor decided to have a little icebreaker meeting to help us get comfortable. I met another Korean girl and began talking about our similarities in our childhood being raised Korean with Christian parents. I opened up to her about the encounter with Pastor Allen, and midway through the story, I saw her face slowly dropping and getting pale. She told me she had a very similar encounter with a pastor she knew, and that he was also a white man working with the youth in an all-Korean church. I asked her where she was from, and she replied with the same state that Pastor Allen was from. She then asked me if the name of the pastor was Pastor Allen. We had the same predator in our lives at the same age. I'm not sure where Pastor Allen is now, but I pray to God that he has not harmed any little Korean girls. It's absolutely disgusting. He was borderline 60 years old when I was 14 or 15. It makes me sick knowing people prey on children in the most vulnerable ways. It ruined a lot about my perspective on Christianity as well. It's horrible to take something so spiritual and take advantage of a child with it. So Pastor Allen, with a creepy young Asian girl fetish, let's never ever meet again. So this happened around a year ago. I was living in a large city in the UK, around a mile from the center. Although the area I lived in was nice, the city itself had a lot of crime. A teenage girl actually got stabbed to death on her way to school on a bus near my flat not long ago. I had just finished my university class and was waiting at the bus stop, and I'm helping a woman locate her bus on the timetable, and as I'm helping her, my bus pulls up and drives away. Just great. A man must have seen the whole thing happen because he comes over to me and says something along the lines of, "Tough luck, that's annoying." And I reply, "Yeah, typical," or something like that. Normal small talk, trying to be polite to him. Shortly after, the next bus comes along. I get on, and so does the man that I was just talking to, which I found weird as he could have gotten the earlier bus I missed. Whatever. I don't really think much of it, and I put my earphones in and continue on the 20-minute journey home. I get off the bus at a normal stop, and I'm walking along when suddenly I feel someone grab my shoulder. I flinch and instinctively push the hand away and look behind me. It's the man from before. I take my headphones out and he says, "Hey, beautiful, you got a man?" My defenses immediately go up, as I'm sure any girl living in a city will understand. I start walking and he follows me. Yeah, sorry. I'm pretty bewildered at this point. I have experienced creepers before, but not someone physically grabbing me. Nah, you're just saying that. I can tell you are lying. Come on, beautiful. Can I have your number? Me. No, I have a boyfriend. I actually wasn't lying. I did have a boyfriend. He continues asking over and over and over again, getting angrier and angrier at me. No, sorry. At this point, I start walking really fast, almost jogging. He's still following me. It's about a 5-minute walk to my flat, and he followed me the whole way back. I honestly think at this point I'm going to get attacked, stabbed, I don't know what. I have never been in this situation before, probably due to the fact I'm a 5'11" girl. Even though I only weigh 130 pounds, I have been told I look intimidating due to my height. So I get to my flat and he's followed me all the way to the doors. Luckily I get in and I shut the fucking door before he follows me and goes up to my flat. Around 30 minutes later, I go out to the balcony and look down and he's still there. Contemplate calling the police, but instead I call for the concierge and they go out and I can hear them threatening to call the police if he doesn't leave. Thankfully he does. I spent the rest of my months living there worried he was going to show up, and luckily he did not. My stomach turned recently when I heard on the news that not 5 minutes from where I used to live, and this all took place, a girl was walking home late at night and she got raped. She flagged a car down for help and got raped again by a different guy. I can't imagine the horror this poor girl went through. To any girls reading this, honestly, look into getting self-defense classes or something, especially if you live in a city. I'd really love to have karate chopped the guy in the dick, but seriously, I was lucky, and it could have ended a lot worse. I have no idea what this guy's intentions were. I don't know if he just wanted my number or if he had something more sinister in mind. Be wary with who you speak. I find with men harassing women in the street, if you completely ignore them, more often than not they will stop. If they don't, or they are getting physical, a loud noise will startle them, so you can run away. Invest in a rape alarm. Also, don't feel like you have to answer a person who is talking to you just to be polite in a situation like this. You don't owe them politeness. Your safety is more important.